Welcome everyone to the Knee Gaming Career Experience. A lot of racing sims or racing games have some sort of a career mode, but nothing really encompassed a true career mode experience the way I was interested in. So I decided to create my own, and I had three simple goals to keep in mind. Number one, I wanted it to be simple. I didn't want it to be a lot of complication to where you had to remember a lot of different things and have a really hard time getting into it. Number two, I wanted it to be customizable. Everything that we're going to talk about and that you're going to see on this spreadsheet can be customized. You can change all of the monetary values. You can change all of the numbers. You can change all of the names, driver names, team names, whatever you like. It's all customizable. And then finally, number three, I wanted to give as many options for play styles as I possibly could. And for me, that means that very few things are required. Most everything that we're going to talk about, you can either decide to do that or simply leave it completely out if you should desire to do so. So with those three things in mind, I set out to create my own career mode that was independent of any racing sim or game. In fact, what I've ended up with here in version 1 of the career experience is a career mode that can actually be played entirely within the spreadsheet itself. You don't even need an outside racing sim or racing game if you decide to go that route. The purpose of today's video is to give you a broad overview of the different areas of the spreadsheet so that you can make a decision as to whether or not this might be for you. And then I will do a separate video where we will get into much more detail about how you go about getting started, the actual steps necessary to choose your first series, purchase your chassis, hire drivers, and then begin entering race results. So for now, let's actually start at the very beginning. The first tab is loaded with tips and then a getting started guide. This is what we're going to focus on in our separate video where I will take you step by step in exactly what you need to do in order to get started, as well as some of the options that you're going to have to increase the difficulty of your career experience or maybe decrease the difficulty. It's entirely up to you. One thing I will note is that as we are moving about through all of the different sheets you see at the bottom of the screen, there are a lot of notes and different pieces of information that I have added in different areas. So for example, if we move into the home screen, which is where we're actually going to start today, you notice a red arrow in the top right hand corner of a particular cell. I highly recommend going through those and just reading over the notes that I have provided. You're going to find a lot of these on the different areas of the spreadsheet, and they can have a lot of valuable information as well as answering a lot of the questions that you may have. The home screen gives you an opportunity to get a quick summary of exactly how well your entire racing organization is doing. Starting in the top left-hand corner, we've got room for a customized team name, should you prefer, and then just below that is our team balance. This is the summary of all of the series that we're participating in. There are a total of 10 series available for you to participate in here in version 1, and the reason I limited it to 10 is because, well, once you start to participate in multiple series, there becomes a lot of information to take in, and there is simply a lot going on because there are so many options in how to deal with this. So you might find that 2 or 3 series is about all that you want to handle, or maybe you're like me and you want to participate in all 10 series. If so, you're going to have plenty to do. Each series will show the title here as we choose to participate in them, as well as a profit and loss summary to give you an idea of exactly how well you are doing. And then ultimately everything filters back into the overall organization balance, which is shown in yellow. You want to keep this number to the positive and keep as much extra money in there as you can because you're going to need it, whether it's expanding into a brand new series that you haven't participated in. So you need money for new cars, maybe you need money to hire drivers and so forth. Or Maybe you want to expand your operations in one of your current series. Maybe you want to hire more drivers and start new teams. Or maybe it's not such a good reason to be spending money. Maybe your drivers aren't doing so well and they're wrecking a lot of race cars. So you're spending money on new chassis and repairing chassis. Either way, you want to keep this balance as high as possible for anything that might come up, good or bad. Next, we move over to the marketing level, and basically you want to get the marketing level as high as you possibly can. The higher the marketing level, the better sponsor and sponsorships that you can attract to your team. And of course, the better your sponsorships, the more profit you can make and the more money you're going to have to expand. Then we move over to our investors tab. Now, the investor tab are how we get new money into our organization. Maybe things aren't going so well and you need a little bit of a boost to continue your operations or expand your operations. The investors area is where you will be able to do that. Now remember, today is all about a brief summary. In future videos, I'll go in much more detail into how this actually works once you get started. But for today, we're just hitting the high points. And then the final area of the home screen is the interested drivers. As you move along your career, you're going to have a lot of options. You can choose to go forward in your career as only a driver. So you're going to own the team and drive for that team. That's perfectly fine. But maybe you're like me and you're really excited about the idea of hiring drivers to drive for you and building a huge racing operation. Well, you're going to need to hire drivers, and you've got a few different ways of doing that. You can always go to one of the tabs that we're going to look at in a little bit, the drivers for hire. There is a huge list of over 200 drivers from all of the different series included in version 1 of the racing experience. You can select one of those drivers, add them to your series, and you're good to go. Or you can add a little bit of randomness in there and use the interested drivers area. Now this area is going to randomly choose one of the drivers from all of these different series, and so it gives you an opportunity to have a driver chosen for you who might be interested in your organization. Just another option available to you. Now that we've covered the home screen, let's move over to the series financials. The series financials tab contains basically all of the financial information for all of the series, whether it's revenue or expenses. Pretty much all of the information is found here on this tab. So any questions you might have as you're playing through the career experience about how much does something cost or how much money can I make if I do this, those answers are probably going to be found here on the series financials tab. Now, one word of warning that I'm going to throw in for this particular area of the spreadsheet is be extremely careful about making changes to the monetary values or the percentages that you see here. And the reason is because a lot of this information affects all of the different series. So you might intend to make a small change that only affect one series and end up affecting all of the series. So be extremely careful. And I'm going to give you some great ways to affect a single series without affecting anything else and harming your career experience here in just a moment. So let's start on the left-hand side of the screen with our official race purse. Again, this is going to affect all of the series. This is our baseline, which is the NASCAR Cup Series. So that's what you're looking at right here, a normal race purse for the NASCAR Cup Series, and there is room for a total of 40 cars in the finishing order. Most series won't need near that many, but I'd like to leave a few more than you might actually need. Now, how do we modify this? Because obviously all of our series aren't going to be using the same race purse values. Not every series needs to make $275,000 for winning a race. Well, we have two ways of modifying the race purse. The first are simple event modifiers. These are single race modifiers and give us an opportunity to increase or decrease the amount of money for a particular race. Now here at the top of the screen you see some examples, but actually on each of the series screens we have separate ones. So this is an area where you can customize a particular series and their event modifiers without worrying about making any changes or adjustments to the other series. So here you have a total of 7 available for you, and you're free to change the wording and naming on these as well as the percentages as well. Back to the series financials, the second possibility for a modifier is actually my favorite if you're looking for overall series changes, and that is the column O. This is the percentage that is applied to each individual series relative to what you see here on the race purse as well as the expenses for the NASCAR Cup Series. So the NASCAR Cup Series is considered to be 100%. It is the top of the line for those of us who live in the U.S. But that certainly doesn't mean that you have to just participate in the series that I have listed here. There are a total of 16 of them, and I tried to include as many as I could. But if there is a series that you really want to participate in that's not listed, then feel free to add it along the bottom. There is plenty of room for you to add more series in here. You're certainly not limited to the ones that are currently available. There are a lot of information available in here, but the biggest thing that I want to point out is your race purse information is listed here, as well as if I scroll across, a lot of your cost or your expense information is listed in here as well. Now you're going to end up seeing all of this information in various forms on the different series sheets that we'll look at here in just a moment. But if you're looking to make changes, or if you're looking to just understand a little bit more about what's going on, the Series Financials tab is the place to do that. Next up, we're going to talk about the individual racing series. Now you notice at the bottom of the screen, there are a total of 10 of these available, which match up with the 10 available back on the home screen. The good news is they all work exactly the same. So once you get into your first series and get used to how it operates, you'll be good to go for all of the remaining series. Now, this is one area we're not going to spend very much time on today because future videos are going to go into a lot more detail on how to get started in your first series, as well as how to expand operation, purchase new chassis, and so forth. So for today, I'm just going to hit a few of the highlights available on this sheet, and then we're going to move on. So for the series, the first thing we will do is enter our series number here in the top left-hand corner, and that's going to dictate all of our revenue and cost values based on some of the things that we saw on the Series Financials tab. We've got our marketing level here, relative performance, which we'll get into much more detail about in the future. But this first area is where we're going to set up our seasons. We're going to have our seasons, our different race numbers, and then the types of events, whether you're looking at standard events, crown jewel special events, or whatever you decide to change these names to. You'll have those. Which track are we racing at? Where did we qualify? And then where did we finish? And you notice we've got areas for up to 4 teams to list race finishes for. Then we move over into the next section, which is your income section. In blue, this is where our race purse will show up for based on our race finishes and the types of races that we're running. And then we have room for a total of 4 sponsors for each of our 4 teams. Now, if you decide not to run all 4 teams, then that's perfectly fine. You'll just simply leave those blank and it will cause no issue at all. At the top of the screen, we have a button which can be used to generate sponsorship offers. Those sponsorship offers will be available for you to choose, and you'll simply copy and paste those into the areas down below, and you'll be good to go. At the end of the income screen, we have our overall total income, and then we'll lead into the expenses area. Now, most of this is going to be pre-filled for you on a regular basis, but you'll have expenses such as total overall team experiences, which again comes from the Series Financials tab, marketing expenses based on our marketing level, driver salary should you decide to hire drivers, and then chassis damage. This is something I'm very excited about that you can include or decide that you want to skip entirely. It is an excellent way to really add another level of difficulty into the experience if you so desire. And then finally, at the end of the expenses area, we have our total expenses, and then finally our profit and loss for that particular event. All right, then we move over to the last area before we get into team management, which gives us our event modifiers, some information about our chassis damage, should you decide to use it, and driver finish generation. I mentioned earlier in the video that you'll have an opportunity to play the entire career experience within the spreadsheet without needing to run any races in an outside game or simulation. Well, this is how you can do it. There is driver finish generation that is provided. I won't go into a ton of detail about that. It uses some randomness that can generate various finishes depending on the skill level of your drivers that we'll see in a little bit. So it really adds a lot of fun if you decide to use it. Then moving over into the team management section. Now, there is a lot of information here on the series screen. I wanted to have it all in one place so that if you wanted to see how you were doing in a particular series, all of that information is available to you without having to flip between a bunch of tabs to get it. This is where you're going to keep track of how many chassis you own, how many teams you're operating, as well as your overall relative performance. And then the very final thing is something I'm also very excited about: driver training. This will give you an opportunity to not only sign drivers to drive for your team here in this area, but also the opportunity to upgrade them, improve their skills, and be able to use them in higher tier series. So again, that's something we'll get into more in a future video, but there is a lot of availability to improve drivers. Essentially, what I wanted to offer you is an opportunity to go through an entire career progression with an AI driver, if you so desire. So that's going to give you the opportunity to do that. So that takes care of a very brief overview of the series screen. Now let's move on to sponsorships. Our discussion of sponsors actually will encompass two tabs on the spreadsheet. The first is the sponsor list, which is where we are now, and then we'll move over to sponsor money, which of course is the exciting part because that's our opportunity to make more money and more profit so that we can expand our operations. So our sponsor list, I had a lot of fun putting this together. I didn't want to go with just the usual sponsors that we're familiar with seeing in all of the events at all of the different levels of racing. I wanted to expand that list to include names that we've never seen sponsor racing events or racing teams, and so I just decided to have some fun and put a lot of odd sponsors in here just to, again, have a little fun with it. There's a total of 129 sponsors available, but if there's a sponsor that you're interested in that is not on the list, feel free to add them below. There is plenty of room to add more sponsors, and you are definitely welcome to do so. Beyond our sponsor list is the sponsor money. Now, there is a lot going on here, but going back to the home screen, the higher the marketing level, the higher the potential marketing offers you can have. And here they are. Here's levels 1 through 15. And the most important areas here are column D and E for your minimum and maximum values at each level. So back on the series screen, we saw that there is a button right up here to generate sponsorships based on your sponsor level. Well, this is going to generate some random offers for random sponsors and random sponsorship amounts based on your marketing level. And this is where it gets the money amount. So the amounts will be randomized between the minimum and maximum for each of these levels, depending on where you are, as well as the maximum marketing level for a particular series. Obviously, even if you are a level 15 as an organization, that doesn't mean that all of the series are going to allow huge sponsorship offers like these. Some of them will be much smaller based on the level and the tier of the series. Also, Column F, I have included some basic guides. These are certainly not exact figures, but I tried to give you some guides. So for example, if you're going to get a cup operation up and running, you probably need to be at least marketing level 13 in order to earn enough marketing money to turn a profit and turn a big enough profit to eventually cover all of your expenses and expand your operations. So these are in there as sort of a guide to let you know that if you're going to enter this particular series, you probably need to be at least this marketing level. And I highly recommend reaching the maximum marketing level for a particular series as soon as you possibly can. Now you can find the maximum marketing level for a particular series back on the series financials in column Q. Here are your marketing levels, or maximum marketing levels for each of the areas. So that takes care of the sponsorships. Now we need to talk about drivers. If you're like me and you really enjoy the ownership area of a career mode, then this is the area for you. Because as you expand your operations into multiple series and multiple teams, then you're going to need to hire a lot of drivers. So this is an area I had a lot of fun putting together. There are a lot of drivers listed for each of the series that we saw back on the series financials tab, except for some of the more local series don't have drivers listed, but there are a lot of drivers available. As we scroll down through, you're going to see Cup, Xfinity, trucks, and so on. As we go down, I tried to include as many drivers in each series as I could and ended up with a total of 212 drivers. It was a lot of fun to put together this list, but just as we talked about with the sponsors, maybe I didn't include a driver that you really want to sign to your team, then by all means, simply add them to the bottom of this list and you'll be off and running. You are definitely encouraged, as I mentioned at the very beginning, to look at multiple options on how to use this career experience to where it fits what you're looking for. So feel free to change and adjust all of the information that you're seeing. So for each driver, we've got a few pieces of information. Of course, we start with the driver name. This is what you would copy and paste onto the series screen should you decide you want to hire them. But then we've got a driver level actually listed in a couple of spots, and this driver level should be the same in both areas. They're simply used a little bit differently in some areas of the spreadsheet. That's why there are multiple listings. And then you've got a salary per race. The salary per race is tied to the level. And the easiest way to put this is that every series has a total of 5 driving levels. So if we use the NASCAR Cup, for example, Cup will have levels 1 through 5 and nothing lower than 5. Xfinity will be 6 through 10, but nothing lower than 10, nothing higher than 6. So that's the way each series works. So don't think of the level so much as the lower the level, the better the driver, as much as the level determines the salary and also the series that they're driving in. Now, you can certainly hire a driver for a lower series. So for example, you might want to put Justin Haley back in the Xfinity series, but he's pretty expensive now for an Xfinity series driver because he's now a Cup driver. So all things to keep in mind, but as we saw on the series screen, there is a way that you can increase the level and increase the skill of your driver. So maybe you want to take Austin Hill out of the Xfinity series and you really want to turn him into a championship level Cup driver. You want to get him all the way to level 1. You can do that through the driver training. We saw that already on the series screen very briefly, and we'll see it again here in just a moment when we look at the driver training. So there are ways that you can take a particular driver and run them all the way through the career mode progression. If you want to start somebody who is, for example, a dirt midget driver, maybe you want to take Jade Avedisian, who is right now a level 30 driver, and you want to take her all the way to being a level 1 Cup championship contender. You can do that through the driver training. Now, how do we get the levels? What do they mean? And how does this all correspond to driver finishes? Well, that is available on the right-hand side of this particular sheet, where we have in column K, we have all of the levels, the amount of their salary per race, and then what these levels roughly translate into. So for example, a level 1 driver, which we see here at the top, those are your championship contenders. So signing a level 1 driver should mean that you're going to get the best average finish. Notice what I said there. Just like in real life, we're talking about the average finish. Doesn't mean they're going to finish great in every race. So keep that in mind. If we sign a level 2 driver, then this is a top 10 caliber driver, which means that they're going to get some really good finishes on a regular basis, but not quite as good as our championship contenders. And then we move on down through the list until we get to level 5, which are your bottom tier for that particular series. So they're going to get the worst average finishes, but every so often they still jump up and have some great finishes as well. There's a bit of randomness there, although it is all probability based, and I'll show you that very briefly at the end of the video. And it's that way for each series. Each series has their championship contenders as well as their top 10, 15, 20, and then the bottom tier. Each series has that, and that's how it's all set up. Now, if we move over to the driver training, let's say if we take our example of Jade Avedizian, who is a level 30 driver right now, and we want to move her up the ladder. Well, this is how you can do it. The series screen contains an area to do just that. So we have this area over here, which is going to list levels 1 to 30, depending on where the driver currently is, and then how much it's going to cost to move them to the next level, how much that cost, your ability to purchase it, and so on. That's where all the information comes from, is right here. So if you start with a level 30 driver, then obviously the first few levels are pretty easy to get through. They don't cost a lot of money. But as you get higher, they start to cost quite a bit of money, multiple millions of dollars. So this is a long-term project that gives a lot of progression should you decide that you want to start with a driver that is in the lower ranks, the lower tier series, and move them up through the career ladder. That option is certainly available to you. Now, that's going to take care of our drivers, and let's talk briefly about how we generate the driver finishes. As I started thinking a lot more about the ownership side of the career experience, I quickly realized that as you start to own multiple teams in multiple series, you're going to need a way to generate some driver finishes, because at first you can very easily use your favorite racing sim or racing game to run the races and get the results that way. But as you expand your team into multiple series, that's going to become a lot to deal with. So I wanted a good way to sort of skip that process and expedite getting race finishes for all of your drivers. So I came up with this probability-based system of driver finish generation. So this is a quick synopsis of what it looks like. If you just want to see the raw data, it is brought together in a little bit easier view here on the cumulative properties screen to give you an idea of sort of how these finishes are generated, or you can just simply look at the driver finishes on the series screen and go with what it shows you. But here is how all of that is generated based on the level of driver. I mentioned that each series has 5 driver levels, and here they are: 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 5. So that's how the driver finishes are generated. So the average finish for a higher level driver is going to be better overall, but it doesn't mean that all of the races will be great finishes. And then we also have some additional probability-based generation for team performance, as well as the chassis damage, which again, we will talk about more in future videos. But that's how the driver finishes are generated. So as you're looking through this area on each of the series sheets, you'll have an idea of where this is coming from. So that's going to do it for today. Hopefully, this gives you at least a broad idea of what the Knee Pit Gaming Career Experience is all about. Thank you so much for joining me, and stick around for future content.